The event in Judges 19 is a horrifying story you likely have not heard of before. This is one story in the Old Testament that is widely regarded as one of the most shocking and disturbing tales in the entire Bible. It's a harrowing account of violence, perversion, and the complete breakdown of societal order. Even seasoned biblical scholars are left stunned and deeply unsettled by the graphic nature of this particular story. If you are not familiar with it, we must caution. The story is extremely distressing and may be triggering for some viewers. This story is not suitable for those below the age of 18. Before we dive in, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a well-told tale from the Bible. The story begins with a Levite, a religious man from the tribe of Ephraim, who takes a concubine from Bethlehem. At some point, the concubine becomes unfaithful and runs back to her father's house. Determined to get her back, the Levite journeys down to Bethlehem. Her father welcomes him into their home, and he stays with them for several days. The Levite says he must depart, that he has overstayed his welcome, but her father insists he stays longer. Before we move forward, it's important to mention that this was a time when there was no king in Israel. At this point, the story starts to get disturbing. Had the young man known what was to befall him, he wouldn't have given heed to his concubine's father's request in the first place. After staying for some time as her father requested, the Levite and his concubine eventually set out on their journey back home. As night falls, they decide to stop in the town of Gibeah, hoping to find shelter there. But no one agrees to offer them a place to stay until an old man takes them in. Little do they know, this decision will lead to unspeakable tragedy. After hearing of a foreigner coming into town that night, a group of perverted men surrounded the old man's house, demanding to have sex with the Levite. In a horrifying act, the host offers to send out the Levite's concubine and his own virgin daughter instead, as a way to appease the raging crowd. Before we move any further, it's important to note that all life is God-given and should be respected as such. These men's desires and actions are a disgrace and defile the image of God. And though the old man was seeking to protect the Levite, the decision to use his own daughter and his guest's concubine as scapegoats is questionable at the very least. After all, the perverted men were originally requesting to have sex with the Levite, not his concubine and the old man's daughter. After giving out the women to them, the men of the city then brutally abused the concubine throughout the night, leaving her dead at the doorstep in the morning. Devastated, the Levite decided to send a message to the 12 tribes of Israel. He dismembered her body into 12 pieces and sent them to the tribes with messages voicing how disappointed he was that a tragedy like this could happen in their land, hoping to provoke action and revenge. The scale of the violence that ensued and the complete breakdown of societal values in this story is very shocking, and it's one that will leave you feeling deeply disturbed. The gruesome news of the atrocity committed against the Levite's concubine in Gibeah quickly spread like wildfire throughout the tribes of Israel, causing a firestorm of outrage and a collective demand for justice. The Israelites, united in their distaste at the moral depravity displayed on that fateful night, gather in the town of Mizpah to address this abominable crime and choose a course of action. At the assembly, the Levite himself stands before the tribes, his face twisted with a mixture of grief and rage, as he recounts the unimaginable details of the assault. With trembling hands, he displays the dismembered remains of his concubine, a very ugly and disturbing sight that serves as evidence of the savagery inflicted upon her. The tribes, their hearts sinking with a shared sense of horror and indignation, explode into a fit of rage, crying for vengeance, their voices audible through the halls of the gathering like the rumbling of distant thunder. At that moment, the fragile bonds of Israelite unity, which had been tilting at the edge of division due to the moral decay and societal breakdown that had gripped the land, became stronger. renewed by a shared sense of outrage and commitment to punish the perpetrators of this unthinkable crime, the men of Gibeah. The tribal leaders, their faces set with steely determination, issue an ultimatum to the tribe of Benjamin, demanding that they hand over the men of Gibeah responsible for the concubine's murder. When the Benjaminites, seemingly unwilling to release their own, refuse to comply with the demands, the die is cast, and the tribes of Israel prepare for an all-out civil war against their fellow Israelites. The gravity of the situation weighs heavily on the minds of the assembled leaders. They understand that the path they have chosen will undoubtedly lead to bloodshed and the possibility of irreparable damages to their society. Yet, in the face of such horrific moral transgression, the Israelites feel that they have no choice but to seek justice, even if it means turning their swords against their own brothers. The bonds of kinship and the shared history that once held the tribes together are now strained to the breaking point, even made worse by the overwhelming need to punish those responsible for the heinous crime committed in Gibeah. Friends, this is where things take a very narrow turn, as the Israelites are about to make a terrible decision and course of action ever heard of before now: civil war. As the Israelites prepare for the impending conflict, a sense of foreboding and unease can be felt. They know that the consequences of their actions, no matter the outcome, will be felt through the generations to come, forever changing the essence of their unity and shared history. The ensuing conflict between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin is nothing short of catastrophic. A bloody and brutal civil war that rips through the heart of the Israelite nation. The battles are fierce and unrelenting, with both sides suffering staggering losses as they clash on the fields of combat, their weapons clashing and their cries of anguish heard across the land. In the end, the might and numerical superiority of the 11 tribes proves too much for the Benjaminites to withstand, and the once proud tribe is nearly wiped out, with only 600 of their men surviving the onslaught. The Israelites, having achieved their grim objective of punishing the perpetrators of the Gibeah atrocity, are left to deal with the devastating consequences of their actions. Their victory is marred by the overwhelming sense of loss and the realization that they have come dangerously close to stamping out one of their own from the face of the earth. As the dust settles, the remaining tribes confront the harsh reality of their handiwork, the near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin. This worrisome realization weighs heavy on their collective conscience as they question the wisdom and morality of their chosen path, wondering if the price that they have paid in blood and anguish was truly worth the vengeance they sought. But that was barely all the bad decisions they made. In fact, the next action the Israelites took shows the sheer consequences of bad decisions and choices. In a desperate attempt to prevent the complete extinction of the Benjamites, the Israelites devise a plan to provide wives for the surviving men. This morally dubious scheme involves planning a raid on the town of Jabesh Gilead. The inhabitants of the town are slaughtered, and the young women are kidnapped and forcibly given as brides to the Benjaminites. This horrific act further worsened the moral dissent and the complete breakdown of societal order that occurred in the aftermath of the Gibeah atrocity. Like we had previously mentioned, this was a time when there was no king of Israel. Additionally, this was a time when its population did not walk closely with God. Here, we see what happens when a society lacks a sense of leadership, direction, and a close connection with God. The story of Judges 19:21 stands as troubling evidence of the vulnerability of human civilization and the ease with which even the most basic moral and social structures can crumble in the face of unchecked evil. The consequences of this tragic train of events will continue to haunt the tribes of Israel, serving as a severe reminder of the dark depths to which we can descend when the very foundation of justice and compassion are removed. The road ahead for the Israelites is paved with uncertainty as they struggle with the scars left by this devastating civil war and the enduring consequences of their actions. As we dive into this deeply troubling sequence of events from the Book of Judges, we can't help but be struck by the sheer weight and relevance of the lessons it holds for us, even here in the modern day. It's a thought-provoking story that cuts right to the center of our hearts and shows the importance of staying grounded in the eternal truths of Scripture. Take the issue of responsibility and accountability, for instance. The complete lack of godly leadership in that time led to a moral and ethical vacuum, where everyone did what was right in their own eyes, as seen in Judges 21 verse 25. It's a chilling reminder of the words from the book of Proverbs 29 verse 18, which says, "Where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint." When a society loses its spiritual and moral compass, the consequences can be utterly devastating, as we see played out in the horrific events in Gibeah. And then there's the callous devaluation of human life, the way the concubine was so brutally violated and abandoned. It's a sickening display of how far people can stray when they lose sight of the fundamental truth that God created man in his own image. When we fail to recognize every person's inherent dignity and worth, we open the door to unspeakable cruelty. But perhaps most sobering of all is the way this story shows the consequences of turning away from God. As the Israelites drifted further from their covenantal relationship with the divine, they became more and more vulnerable to moral decay and the commission of unthinkable acts. Once again, this is a chilling recall of the Apostle Paul's warning in 2 Timothy 4, verse 3, that the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions. And yet, even amidst all that darkness, we see the brightness of God's unrelenting grace in Israel. As devastating as the losses were, and as horrific as the fratricidal conflict became, we see the tribe of Benjamin ultimately being restored. This speaks of the power of divine mercy to heal the deepest of wounds, a reminder that, as the psalmist declares in chapter 34, verse 18, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." The bottom line in all of this is the vital importance of wise, thoughtful decision-making, both on an individual and societal level, because, as this story so clearly illustrates, our choices, no matter how small, can have profound and far-reaching consequences that extend well beyond our control. It's a thought-provoking lesson in the weight of our actions and the need to approach the decisions of life with the kind of care and discernment that the book of Proverbs calls us to in chapter 16, verse 9. "The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." Ultimately, this harrowing story does not only serve as a severe warning, but also a profound invitation to re-anchor ourselves in the timeless truths that are meant to guide us. It's a call to cultivate a deep sense of personal and communal accountability, to cherish the inherent dignity of every human life, and to remain steadfast in our commitment to the divine. For it is in that unshakable connection that we find the strength to go through even the darkest of valleys, trusting in the promise that weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes with the morning. Let us know what you think about the story of Judges 19 in the comments section. And if you enjoyed the lesson shared in this video, leave us a like, as it really helps us spread this message. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and turn on the notification bell so that you never miss a video. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.